How's it going, guys? And welcome to the showdown between the Empire, led by a Standard General, and the Dark Elves, who are going to be led by Malekith, the Witch King. So guys, let's jump right into this match and take a look at some of these builds. So on the front line, I do have a combination of greatswords for their armor piercing and anti-infantry bonus, and I definitely think you need some armor piercing in this matchup. If you look over here at the Dark Elves, this is a pretty common composition. You usually see a combination of Blackheart Corsairs, which do have 80 armor, and they're going to be supported by mostly low-tier frontline troops, so like Bleak Swords and Dread Spears and things like that. Going wide against the Empire definitely works pretty well because, again, the Empire Infantry Corps usually isn't that strong. If you look at greatswords compared to like Chaos Warriors and, units of equivocal value on other factions, they're not quite up to the strength of the other ones, in my opinion. But on that same note, that's why I think it's pretty strong to go wide against them because, again, the Empire gets most of its strength from its cav and its back line with its guns and the silver bullets and nets of Amnitok. But in this game, I wanted to try something a little bit different. So instead of going with the very competitive nets build, because I think that's probably one of the only ways the Empire can really just consistently compete with the high-tier factions is with nets of Amnitok and really isolating those high-value targets, I wanted to try something a little bit different. So the Grey Wizard, or Evil Gandalf as we call him, has a couple abilities. So he has Enfeebling Foe right here, which is pretty good for like duelist type situations. So if you're fighting up against like Malekith on a Black Dragon or any other high value targets like enemy cav, you can actually use the Enfeebling Foe to lower their melee attack and melee defense by quite a bit. It only costs 6 wounds of magic and it has a very short cooldown. And you'll notice that the cooldown is 24 seconds and the duration is also 24 seconds. So you can pretty much constantly keep this on one unit. So for example, if your Royal Altar of Gryphites are fighting Malekith, or they're fighting against like Cold One Riders or things like that, you can really change the tide of the battle quite a bit. On top of that, I do have the Penumbral Pendulum, and this is one that I think is okay against the Dark Elves. They tend to have pretty linear battle lines. You're going to be seeing like Dark Shards lined up next to each other and Bleak Swords and Dread Spears kind of in these very like straightforward formations. So you can get some really good value. Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, if I were playing in a tournament, would be the safer bet. But again, guys, I'm trying out new stuff and hopefully you enjoy it. So in the front, like I said, I do have the Great Swords, and then on top of that, I do also have two groups of Unbreakable troops, so the Tattersouls and the Sigmar Sons. These guys, again, don't have heavy armor piercing, but against most Dark Elf players, like I said, you're going to see Corsairs and Bleak Swords and things like that. And Sigmar Sons and the Tattersouls also do very well against those type of troops. So that's pretty much it for my front line. In the back, I do have the Silver Bullets. I think I just only have them. I don't think I have any other gun units. So just the Silver Bullets, because again, most Dark Elf players are going to bring like a bunch of Dark Riders and things like that. And I didn't really want to allocate too much to protect my back line. So I have these guys, and they do have stock. So they're not going to take any fire from Dread Spears, or not Dread Spears, Dark Shards and things like that before the fighting starts. And to protect them, I do have two groups of the Spearmen with shields. So I figured I'd try these guys out. I mean, they cost a little bit more, but their melee defense is very high. It's actually 42. And I figured that if enemy cav come in, they could really hold. And on top of that, if they get shot at by like repeater crossbows or dark shards and it's a very long, atrocious battle, maybe it would pay off. For my cav, I went very, very cav heavy. So I do have the Knights of the Blazing Sun. I don't know if they're the best pick, but they look really, really cool. And they have a massive charge bonus. So I figured I could get into those Blackheart Corsairs and Bleak Swords and things like that and do a ton of damage. So I do have those guys, and then I have one on the far side. And for my elite cav, I do have the Royal Altar of Gryphites, who are going to be escorting this General of the Empire. So that's pretty much it for my army. For my opponent, he does have a couple of groups of Dark Riders over here in the forest. It's pretty standard protocol. You always need to harass the Empire backline, or else they're just going to run shop on you usually. And for his main army, he does have a combination of the Blackheart Corsairs and Bleak Swords in the front line, which I definitely think is the way to go. Because, even the Blackheart Corsairs with the support of Dark Shards can take out Great Swords fairly, not super easy, but again, the Dark Shards can really pepper them down. So you just need some troops in the front line to kind of hold them in place. He does have a couple groups of Witch Elves, which are pretty much the standard of any competitive Dark Elf build, and Dread Spears in the back line, a couple of groups of Cold One Knights, a couple of groups, I think he just has one actually, and it looks like he does have Malekith on the Lizard Limo. So I don't know if there's still a bug with Malekith on the Limo, but he used to not have an attack interval, and it was really tough, but I'm pretty sure they fixed that. For his spells, he does have the Gaze of Malice, Doom Bolts, and, well, Gaze of Malice comes with him, but Soul Stealer, a Doom Bolt, Blade Storm, and then also the Power of Darkness. So that's pretty much it, guys. My apologies for the long-winded introduction, and let's get the show on the road. So right now, there's a bit of posturing. I was expecting a gentleman's battle here in the open field, but I should have expected some treachery from the Dark Elves who are taking this high ground position. So I really wish the maps were a little bit more like kind of a, like the same on both sides. I feel like there's so many maps that just favor one opponent. Now, I don't think this one does per se, because I could have been really, really kind of monotonous, just grueling and marched up and around and engaged here and just force this very like even battle. But I'm just going to go around and try and meet him head on here. So, but this was also pretty nice because, again, when he's like coming around trying to get an angle with these Dark Shards, he's lining them up in a big bunch. So you can see Evil Gandalf is going to be on the low ground, just magically running through snow with his witchcraft, and he's going to be using probably a pendulum on these three Dark Shards because Yeah, most people tend to bunch up their dark shards. You definitely want to be careful if you see a Grey Wizard, especially if he has the Pendulum. So I'm kind of, hiding under the mountaintop here. He was lining up to get some really good shots, and I think he did get a volley off, but I was able to kind of hide before it did any substantial damage. These Knights of the Blazing Sun still took about, 200-300 HP damage there. So his troops are up here, and he's going to be kind of positioning over on the mountainside to try and shoot up and over, and with the new Arc of Fire on archers, you actually can do that sometimes. Because you guys have probably seen in other replays when, like, a Skaven Slinger will throw the ball, like, straight up in the air. Well, not the ball, the sling, whatever it is, the rock. And it literally goes, like, straight up in the air and just comes down. It's, like, the most, like, ridiculous-looking animation ever. But regardless, we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit. You can see his Dark Shards are here, so I do get a Pendulum. And check this out. It just decimates those guys and just cuts them to shreds. So that was a really good catch for me right there. I'm able to take those guys down to half health. So definitely a very, very good catch in the beginning. And I figured that he didn't really have any spears or anything over here. So I was like, let's get these Knights of the Blazing Sun and see if I can get a decent little charge here. But with, these bleak swords and these arrows reforming ranks and running back here, I didn't really want to get bogged down in infantry quite yet. So, in the meantime, I'm going to be reinforcing my ranks and getting these Royal Altdorf Griffites up into the forest. I figured he didn't really have as strong of, cav as I did. I had a big advantage there, so I really needed to take advantage of it. But the big issue with my build in this game was the fact that he really kind of caddied up on this high ground position. Because when you have cav, I mean, as much of your flank as you can cover, like with terrain, it's going to give you a huge advantage. So he has all this area that he doesn't need to worry about. His archers can pretty much fire with impunity. I really have to fight through infantry to get to them, which is not fun at all for me. So in the meantime, you can see all my troops are going to be kind of, posturing up on the high ground. I'm taking a little bit of Dark Shard fire, so that was pretty tough. I think he actually used some sort of foul magic on me here that I didn't get a chance to show you guys. But Sigmar Sons are going to be doing an uphill charge, which is definitely never fun, but they will be engaging on the Bleak Swords. They have 36, 35, 28, and these guys are quite a bit stronger, 38, 46, and 30. So I do have the advantage there. And you can also see my Knights of the Blazing Sun are just going to be going balls deep, trying to get a pretty good charge here, but they are taking some fire. And here comes the glorious Empire charge. So Knights of the Blazing Sun, Grail Knights units like that are definitely some of the more fun units to watch charge, and they're going to get in there with those big old direct lances and have a good old time with some of these Dark Elves. So they charge in, do some okay damage, nothing terribly devastating. I thought it would be a lot more damage, but my opponent does pull back pretty quick. He has some Dread Spears and also his Black Arc Corsairs, and I can afford to stay a little bit, for part of the battle here. And it looks like there's going to be a Melkoth Mystifying Miasma going down from Evil Gandalf, just slowing those guys down, doing some damage, and allowing me to escape. These Sigmar Sons and other troops are fighting in the front line, doing pretty well for me. They will trade well with the Bleak Swords for the most part, and we can see they're down to 83, and the Sigmar Sons are at 85, and it looks like I do have a small advantage in terms of the damage, but it will add up over time. In the meantime, I am pulling up my Great Swords, and the Great Swords are going to charge right into these Black Arc Corsairs, which is pretty much the ideal matchup as far as my build goes. I will be in re-engaging these Knights right here and hoping for the best. In the meantime, I tried to get around my opponent's flank, but he had a really good kind of formation over here. He had Dread Spears and Witch Elves, so I couldn't really get into that. So I just slammed into the front line. I'm supporting my Great Swords using the Royal Altar of Griffites to fight some of these very elite Dark Elf cav. So it looks like there's going to be a Soul Stealer going down from Malekith. Definitely a very good target. Very, very well played by my opponent. That's going to do a ton of damage to my Great Swords and all my troops here. And the Royal Altar of Griffites are trading well with these Cold One Knights, but they're also taking a ton of damage in tow. In the back, Malekith is kind of chilling with his Lizard Limo, and here we're going to have a wild shirtless fight. I mean, my guys, the Witch Elves technically don't really have any clothes either, but he's going to get a good engagement on me here. I was trying to flank around, but you can see that I'm screening for my cav, so I was just running and trying to stay ahead of him so he couldn't get on my cav, and I could perhaps get my Knights of the Blazing Sun up and around, and I think I'm going to be able to get away. And this is a great engagement, just two units just fighting to the death, but Malekith gets a great Gaze of Malice right there. And this was a little bit tough. It looks like a couple of groups of my Knights of the Blazing Sun do get caught by those Witch Elves, so hopefully they don't rampage there, and it looks like they're able to push through. In the meantime, I did have my Silver Bullets in the back, kind of up on a high ground position shooting, and I had some Spears defending them, but the Spears were able to intercept one group, but he had two groups, and I wasn't able to protect with both of them. So very well played by my opponent getting into my back line there, but so far a very even fight. The Royal Altar of Griffites have taken a bit of a beating. Some of my Knights of the Blazing Sun did get taunted by those Witch Elves initially, but I do get into the cookie jar with one group, so he had a lot of defensive Spears and Witch Elves in the back, but I finally get through, and I'm going to get a great charge right here on the high ground. So you can see these Witch Elves, or not Witch Elves, these Dark Shards are just going to get ramshackled by these Knights of the Blazing Sun. A huge charge bonus, just taking a massive shock damage, and you can see they're up to 30 kills, probably most of them being on this unit of Dark Shards right here. So I'm able to basically shut down all three of his missile units with this one cav unit, and also get a really good pendulum on his main line right there. So things are going pretty well. I mean, I felt like it was a good game. I had lost a little bit in my back line, but for the most part, I was able to secure. But somehow, some way, the bounce of power is still so heavily in my my opponent's favor. Partially due to this high ground engagement, you can see the Black Arc Corsairs with their anti-infantry bonus actually trading surprisingly well with these Great Swords, which really caught me off guard. In the main fight, you can see the Sigmar Sons and other troops are holding and beating these Bleak Swords, but in this kind of center pocket here, my opponent's infantry corps really, kind of just outdid me. In the back, I do have the Royal Altar of Griffites as well as the General of the Empire hunting down the Lizard Limo, and he's really quick actually. I mean, he has, how much speed does he have? Only 66, but I wasn't able to get a good surround. You can see he's going to be running into my Great Swords here. He does have really good AP and anti-infantry, so that Chariot is going to do some work. I did win this infantry battle, but again, the balance of power is going in my opponent's favor. You can see in the back, I was able to get some my Grey Wizard to cut Evil Gandalf to come protect against these Dark Riders, and I should be able to kind of re-secure my Silver Bullets, as with the support of this Grey Wizard, they're able to kind of defend against these Dark Riders. Over here, I do have a couple of groups of Tattersouls fighting against these Witch Elves in a very, very bloody engagement, but it looks like the Witch Elves were able to pull that one out. And a very nice Gaze of Malice going down from Malekith. In the back, I have some Spears coming to kind of support, and it's a very, very close fight at this point. Even though the balance of power looks to be in my opponent's favor, I still have a lot going on. In the back, I do have a couple of groups of Knights of the Blazing Sun, 26 models, trying to, outkite this whole group of infantry and get back into these Dark Shards. But man, these guys just took a beating from the Knights of the Blazing Sun and that Pendulum, so that's definitely something that's going in my favor this game. Over here on the far side, I was able to fend off those Dark Riders. I do have some Spears coming up from the high ground, and we're able to get a bit of a surround on these Witch Elves with these Spearmen here. Well, not a surround, but just an engagement. This is good for me. They have, 5 armor, and the Spearmen should be able to, over the course of a long, bloody battle, take out quite a few of those guys. So, I do get an engagement with my Greatswords, also getting a good flanking maneuver. So the Witch Elves and Blackheart Corsairs right here are a little bit flanked, and he also did cast the Power of Darkness on these Blackheart Corsairs, which is going to rejuvenate Malekith's Winds of Magic. You can also see that the bounce of power is coming back in my favor just a little bit, kind of tilting towards the middle. I do get a pretty good surround of Malekith. I have my General of the Empire, as well as these Royal Altdorf Giffites, who are still, 12 models deep. And it looks like they're actually able to terrify those Blackheart Corsairs, which is really nice. And Malekith, I was really surprised at how he wasn't taking more damage against these Royal Altdorf Giffites, as well as my General of the Empire. He was just standing toe-to-toe for so long in this battle, and I just couldn't get him down. You can also see that a Soul Stealer is going to be going down, but Evil Gandalf does come in and get a really, really good charge here, but the Soul Stealer is going to do a ton of healing on Malekith and make it that much harder to take him down. So the Soul Stealer is probably going to start killing these Royal Altdorf Giffites. You can see they were actually at 12 models, and now they're down to 4. So since they started fighting Malekith here a moment ago, they've lost 4 models. So definitely some tough stuff. My General of the Empire is also taking a ton of damage. I just couldn't believe it. Malekith was tanking all these troops. Over on the far side, you can see my Knights of the Blazing Sun were able to outflank his infantry, and here comes another glorious charge for Sigmar. Well, actually, I know a lot of you guys had corrected me in terms of the lore that the Knights of the Blazing Sun actually worship someone else, but regardless, we'll just say for Sigmar, for the sake of this cast right here. So the Knights of the Blazing Sun are going to charge in against those Dark Shards, who only have 30 models, and I should be able to kind of pile through here and get on those other group of Dark Shards. So on that same note, though, he does have some Bleak Swords, and he's finally caught up to me here, so I figured it was probably worth it to just give up this group of the Knights of the Blazing Sun just to take out all of these Dark Shards and different missile units, and hopefully that would kind of allow my leadership and other infantry troops to pull out this fight. So in the front fight here, you can see my Grey Wizard and some of these Greatswords are able to fight pretty well against these Blackheart Corsairs and definitely laying a bit of a spanking on those guys. And my leadership battle's actually going okay. I do have some of these Spearmen with shields that are rallying right here, and things are looking okay. The bounce power is in my opponent's favor. I do have my Knights of the Blazing Sun somehow continuing to just squeak through and just run around and get around his Spearmen, but it looks like they're finally going to meet their end here. They only have 11 leadership, negative 16 leadership right there, and they're probably going to go down. So it's a bit of a period in the battle where both players, myself and my opponent, are going to be reforming ranks. You can see I do have my General who's going to be chasing down some of these Blackheart Corsairs, but it looks like my opponent does have a little bit more density than me. Malekith is really low. You can see he's at about 1100 HP. He has all of these Bleak Swords and Dread Spears and other troops like that. And I don't know if I have the stopping power to get through it. I do have a couple groups of Spearmen, some Great Swords, but I do have Evil Gandalf. And I don't remember how much Winds of Magic I have, but again, a really good Pendulum could perhaps pull this game back into my favor. And also, if I can get my paws on Malekith, I might be able to pull out some sort of a heroic victory here. So the Spearmen are going to be engaging against the Bleak Swords, which is going to be a pretty bad engagement for me, but again, it's just going to be kind of wet noodles hitting each other here. But Malekith is going to come in with his Lizard Limo. I do have some Great Swords in the back, going to provide some support, and I also do get into the back line a little bit with some of these Spearmen, but Malekith gets a really good Gaze of Malice that's able to pop those guys, but I still should be able to get onto those Dark Shards. But my opponent's micro with Malekith has been pretty impeccable. In the meantime, the General of the Empire and the Grey Wizard are going to be hunting down Malekith, and you can see Evil Gandalf looks like he was about to get a charge, but I think his AI got screwed up or he had a dropped order or something. And I do get a good surround here. Malekith is at 800 HP. You can see my General comes in, sets him down another 200. So he's down to 630 HP, and it's looking okay. And also the Royal Altdorf Giffites are coming in. But my opponent, somehow this Lizard Limo is able to escape somehow. He gets away from Evil Gandalf and my General of the Empire. And the bounce power is still in my opponent's favor. But if I feel like if I can get Malekith, I might be able to pull out a victory. But he does dodge that attack right there, and he's able to just pull away from my General. And I feel like even if he turns around and fight, he might still be able to beat my General just because he's Malekith. But who knows? All kinds of treachery. So he's going to be running towards these Blackheart Corsairs who are coming up the hill here. They should be able to protect their General, but it looks like, yeah, I'm going to have to pull back right there. So not fun stuff for the Empire. But on the high ground, I was able to kind of win that hill engagement. My Spearmen are in pretty good shape. I mean, as far as the late game standard goes, I do have 26 Great Swords, so they do have a downhill charge right here. So I'm just forming ranks, trying to screen out this big army over here. While in the meantime, I try and outmaneuver his Blackheart Corsairs and his Witch Elves and other troops to try and get on Malekith. But this is definitely one of the worst aspects of the game right now for me, is that he has these Witch Elves. And look how close they are to taunting these Raw Outdoor Griffites, one of my last bastions of hope. So I'm just doing everything I can to try and run away from those guys and also avoid these Blackheart Corsairs. So I do cast that Mill-Cost Mystifying Miasma. It's pretty much all I had Winds of Magic for. And the Witch Elves are just so fast. They're like chasing me down. And all they need to do is get one good attack on my general. But I get one last charge right there on Malekith. But it looks like it's a swing and a miss. And his other forces are going to be pouring over the hill here. And I just couldn't quite get him. So very well played to my opponent. It was an extremely close game. Back and forth all the way. We had the Pendulum. We had some pretty good cav charges. But honestly, our infantry corps just couldn't hold up to him. The Great Swords and, you know, the Sigmar Sons and other troops, even though they got a lot of kills, like his infantry corps was able to just zerg me. And also Malekith, you know, we just couldn't get him. There were so many points in the battle where I had him pinned, he was taking a ton of damage, and things were looking pretty good for me, but I just couldn't finish him off. Also, I was a little bit inept at trying to guard my not my spearmen, but my silver bullets. He was able to get those cav and those dark riders. Even though I did fend them off, I still could have used those silver bullets to really finish off Malekith there at the end. I think that would have been really good. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this Empire versus Dark Elf game. It was definitely a bit of an experimentation with the lore of shadows. It worked pretty well. I honestly liked it quite a bit. I think getting, I guess I did have Mill-Cost Mystifying Miasma, but I think the Lore of Life, not Lore of Life, but Lore of, I'm just totally like blanks. I've been casting all day, guys. But the Lore of Nets, we'll just call it the Lore of Nets. The Lore of Light would have been a little bit better. Nets of Amnitok would have allowed me to trap Malekith and get that really good DPS and also pin down his Witch Elves and other things like that. But ultimately, Shadows wasn't bad, and I think it is viable. I think it can be made to work, and yeah. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Very well played to my opponent, the Offbeat. Look forward to running into you again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this showdown. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.